Hello everyone, I'm Ribbert and this is one of my builds. It's uh it's gonna be a bunch of farms and a church as the title suggested. I think it's 7 farms and a church, and I'm just gonna talk you through it, but first I want to show off something I'm working on. I'm working on these puzzle pieces for bike paths. They're um well, in the Netherlands where I live we have a lot of these kind of bike paths, and um I used another mod as a base and just changed the texture at first. And now I've also changed the trees and flora props that are used. Or I'm not sure if you call them props. It's still a work in progress. Some of the plants are, because they use a random rotation, that's not something I modded in there. I think that's just how flora are generated in general. And the result of that was that some of them are still overhanging, and especially on the straight ones and the cross intersection ones. So I'm still working on that. And on another note, there's also the idea of maybe doing some diagonals for that. And I had the idea of making diagonals by allowing for the rotation to swap to a different shape. So if you would rotate a straight piece 4 times, then after the fourth time it would go into 4 diagonal rotations. And I've seen the NAM puzzle pieces do that stuff, and I have no idea how they did that. So I might not be able to do that for now, and maybe I'll just release it as a for now kind of thing, and then I'll see if I can make it do the diagonals on rotation later. I don't know. I'm not even sure if I should release this because um well, there's already a couple of mods like this out there, and I still have some things to test because I posted a screenshot on Reddit and somebody commented that he was using one of those packs a while back, and at some point it's glitched out the terrain. And I know for some reason the terrain glitches have disappeared for me. I think it has to do um, with the grass mod. I used the mod for the roads that um, um, made all the grass near the road be of the texture pack that I'm using for the terrain, and I also made them all go only use one wealth level. And I think that actually changed something about the. I don't know what it changed. So I'll have to test that if that's even the case. And I'm just. I might spend some time on that, but I don't know how much time I want to spend on that. But at least I'm working on these bike paths, and I'm not even showing them off right now. So I'll be showing them off a bit later in the episode. I'll be building a bit of a network. It's not the kind of network that I was imagining yet, and I'm thinking of ideas of how to make these pedmals um, be very functional, because you can't, as far as I know, you can't really mod the speed that people walk on them. So in general, you'd have to really think about the way you lay them out, so they become the shortest path to work, or at least the fastest path. So, and which would need to be the shortest because it's probably the slowest way of transportation right now. And to be fair, even bikes are uh, a bunch slower than cars in general, but it really depends on the facilities, because when you compare bikes to public transit, then um, uh, it depends on where you're traveling, how long your ride is and stuff. But I've had times that it was very competitive between me going by bike or taking the bus or even the tram. Um, Yeah, so here I'm just laying out some of this infrastructure that I was planning on, and I thought a fractionally angled road would work pretty nice there with the water going in a yeah in a good angle for fractionally angled road. But the terrain was derping me out a little bit. I think in the end I make it look pretty nice. But yeah, the new rail system or the new way that rails work in the NAM 38 and all that stuff was derping me out a bit. So it took me a little while, and then I ended up with still the fences being derped out over there because the terrain, and I just used some trees to cover it up. And yeah, I think I think that's a fine solution as long as you don't see it on the well when you're looking at your builds. If you don't see anything that bothers you, it doesn't really matter if you use some trees to hide the imperfections. Um, for most people, this is not really a game that I'm playing. Well, the way I'm playing it right now, as I'm showing this off, is very different from how normal people play the game. I think normal people tend to just um, go for the challenge of getting a big city and don't really bother with all the detailing. And I think the game was designed to be played more like that. But I think the designers also had in mind that it would be nice to allow for more aesthetic ways of playing because they did include some tree tools in the base game. Though, yeah, they did allow for mods too. And I think, yeah, I think it's fine. Any way you want to play this game, as long as you're proud on what you build, and as long as well, you don't even have to be proud of what you build. Who cares? Just make sure you're having fun. Just have fun with any kind of game, and especially a game like this. Uh, don't be overwhelmed by the crazy stuff some people can build because uh, I've been watching I've been looking at some of those what you call it? It's called a city journal. I've been looking at some of those city journals on Centropolis, and I've seen some people build some ridiculously good looking stuff that um, yeah, I think it would either take me several years to build something as cool as that, or yeah, it would have to take me several years, or maybe yeah, maybe I just don't know what they're doing, and there's just a couple of things that I need to learn to build stuff as cool as that. But I was like, that's super cool. So here I'm building the first. Um, yeah, well, at the start I was just replacing some of these pedmall bike paths, and the cool thing about them is that they work as pedmalls. Um, what pedmalls do is they allow you to use industry and commercial next to them uh, without them the industry or the commercial buildings needing to have road access. You can't do this for residential because the way the pathfinding works is it always starts with the car at the house and then it starts to find paths. And it does, that doesn't mean that everybody always starts with the car, but that's the way it initially finds the path. And once it has found a path to a certain job or something, then it starts to optimize that path and look for maybe subway stuff or whatever. And what I did here is I used some of those Batmall stuff um, to try to force the farm building that's gonna be spawning to make it next to the rail, because I was noticing I had zoned a bunch of stuff near the rail, and I didn't notice when I first built it. But what I was noticing was um, that the farms weren't producing any freight trains, and I wanted to have some freight trains because I've built all this rail. I would be nice to have some trains driving around. So um, the other option would have been to just build a freight station somewhere, and I'm still planning, or I am planning on doing that. But this episode, I wanted to build I wanted to build some of the infrastructure for the pedmall bike paths. I wanted to build a church, as you can see me start doing here. I posted an image of this church on Reddit, and I got some pretty positive reactions. So I hope you like the church. I think it turned out very well, and yeah, I'm just experimenting with some of these parks. I did decide that I wanted to have a fence around it because these old kind of churches with I'm also planning to do a graveyard behind it because well, that's just the way I remember one of these old churches from the place where I grew up. I believe I remember it having a graveyard in the back, and I believe I remember. I don't remember those paths going around it. I think the paths might be a bit weird, but it was the only way to place these fences down. And I do remember that the old church had a pretty fancy fence going all around it. And yeah, I did want to simulate that. And yeah, the maker of these fences, um, I think the fences look pretty nice, and they might be a bit low on the I don't know the pixels. They look a bit grainy, I guess. But in general, I think it makes for some pretty. It allows you to make some pretty nice builds. And for the graves, there were some options of bigger gravestones or those. Um, I'm not sure what you call them, but they are those tomb kind of things. But I didn't really like those because they just didn't. Um, yeah, in my memory, we didn't have those kind of big things. I think the Dutch people are pretty sober about their graves in general, and we don't really have those mausoleum. I think it was called it's called a mausoleum probably. So we don't have those, and I didn't want to build them. And the other one was a grave lot that had like a super large amount of graves stacked up super close to each other, which didn't look very humane or realistic to me either, but maybe that is realistic in some parts of the world. And what I did for the fencing around this graveyard slash church build is I didn't continue it all the way around. In part, that is because I was assuming that some of the backyards would just basically serve as a fence, and yeah, some of them actually do that. And the other part of it is that I did want to have some benches around there because I don't know. I remember when I used to go to the graveyard to visit some relatives. Yeah, at some point you can get overwhelmed by emotions, and it is it's nice to have at least a bench somewhere around that you can just take a moment to sit and yeah, to catch your breath, I guess. So um, yeah, I'm using these plants, and I overdid the plants at first, so I had to redo some stuff. And I planted the plants on a weird spot that I felt like right on top of a bunch of graves, which felt weird. So in the end, this is what it looks like. If you want to have a closer look, you can look on the SimCity 4 Reddit. There's a pretty, it's not like a 4K screenshot, but I think it's technically called Full HD or something. At least for me, it's a full screen image, and yeah, you can use that as a I want to say background, but it's called hmm, a wallpaper. And yeah, wallpaper means two things, of course. In one part, it means uh, paper for on your walls, but I wouldn't suggest you use it for that. I mean, of course, the thing on your computer where it makes the background of your desktop a certain image. So you could use it for that if you like it, and if you don't, that's cool. So let me talk about the bike pass a bit more. Um, I did some custom tree and plants that uh, it was the type of plants that I'm already using in this city, just in general, because I think they're some of the most detailed and best plants we have for SimCity 4. So I decided to just use those because I do want to encourage as many people as I can. Um, if they like plants or like to use plants to make the cities more realistic, then those are probably the best ones you can get. Here I'm just trying to smooth out this road a bit, and yeah, I made it look a bit weird, but life can be a bit weird, so I think it ends up looking pretty okay. And I had the idea there to make a bit of a driveway, so I think it looks pretty smooth right now. And here I'm just thinking, how am I going to continue this? Because I could have put that off, but yeah, I was like, let's just do that right now for at least that far. Now here the thing was still a bit rough, so I used some wheels to smooth it out. And the thing about the bike paths that I made is that I also included some pieces with benches. And what I did for the different puzzle pieces for the straight piece, because what I assumed is that you use a straight piece the most. So I made 5 variations of it, with one of them having a little bench. And for the corners, I made 2 variations. No, three. I believe I made 3 variations for the corners, also with one of them having a bench. And for the T intersection and the crossroads, it didn't really make sense to me to have a bench on one of those. So I just made 2 variations for those. So if you just randomly plot them without thinking, you already get a pretty varied look. And I'm not sure if I like all the designs that I made. And it's pretty easy to make new designs, but it's also not too desirable, I think, to make too many of them, because it just um, makes it less likely that if you're looking for a specific piece, you would get it, because they do um, have to be totally random. I try to do them in a by order basis, so you would first get the first one, then the second one, and I don't know, maybe there's something for that, but the thing that I thought was for that was actually for making multi-tile patterns. And how I would explain that is that um, on an invisible level, the map is divided into 4 by 4 squares, and you could assign each of, well, you can assign a tile to any of those squares or all of them. And if you do all of the tiles for all of them, then it just uses them all randomly. But if you exclude one from a certain uh, coordinate, I guess you would call it, then, well, if you make each of them a specific coordinate and you make like 16 different tiles, um, that doesn't mean that you have 16 different things in the menu, by the way. You just use the one menu button and it just um, uses that setting to access the different tiles or the different props. It's a file that defines which kind of textures you're using on that tile, and it defines, well, it doesn't have to define the textures, but it can. and it can also define the building or the props. So that way you could just use a single tile and make a 4x4 pattern for like a big plaza with a interesting pattern. And I think that would be something interesting to do. And I'll think about things that I might want to do with that. Maybe for a marketplace, just make uh, a single prop for a marketplace. And if you start placing it on the right spot, and you, well, I don't know, maybe it it would be nice to still have some randomness. So maybe you'd make two tiles for each of the 16 tiles, or you just make some of them have an overlap. Uh, there's a lot of things you can do with that, and I'm not really explaining it well. I do quite understand it pretty well how it would work, but yeah, it's kind of hard to find all the right words. Yeah, so here I just built some farms. You've seen me build a farm before, and some of these farms I do decorate already, at least the borders, and I did one pretty thoroughly. I think I did this one pretty thoroughly as well. And a couple of these farms I don't know if I forgot. I kind of forgot, and when I didn't forget and thought about decorating it, I thought, well, this video is getting a bit long, so I forgot for a while to decorate one of those farms, and yeah, I'll do that in between the episodes. So yeah, you can see kind of what it's gonna look like when I decorate a farm like that. I try to always do something different when I do a new farm because, hmm, yeah, well, farms are pretty random. They're completely defined by the people that decided to build that farm. And it would be weird to have a very monotone farm design, in my opinion, though in real life, there's also, well, at least in the Netherlands, most farms are highly optimized because, well, agricultural products is like one of our biggest export products. And we're also like the second biggest exporter of agricultural stuff in the world. So yeah, and we're also a super small country if you didn't know that. And these facts might be wrong, they might be outdated, but at least they paint the right picture that we are good at farms. And so everything in the Netherlands surrounding farms is in most cases super highly optimized and very structured, but the whole structuring is also part of um, the way our land is shaped by the whole water management that we do, I believe. And yeah, here I try to, because I kind of forgot to build something for all the garbage in the past couple of episodes, and I wanted to use that prop, but or that lot, but the building changed, turned to green. So in the end, I just bulldozed it, and I did test it in between recording this video and recording this audio, and it did work then. So I don't know what was going on, but I think I'll just um, try that one again because I did um, modify the textures that it uses for the rails because it used to use those classical rail textures which didn't transition into these real textures very well. So I modified the textures uh, and had to make some compromises on the way the rails looked in the end, but at least it looked more functional for me. So yeah, I'm probably gonna build that anyways, but for now I used some of those garbage burners. I just placed one at first, but then later on I noticed that that wasn't enough to keep my city happy, so I plopped a couple more down. And here you can see me look at the census um, building. census repository, I believe it's called. And I kind of know what those words are, but they are so rarely used in normal English that it's always a weird word to say for me. Um, but what I did in between videos is I actually replaced that building because it kind of stood out too much for me. So what I did was I used the building of the farmers market. Yeah, I used the building of the farmers market, and I used some custom props for market stalls, and I just made a census building that looks like a little bit of a marketplace. And I think you'll see that in the next video. Maybe you're watching this in 4 weeks time and you can just hop on over to the next video, or just enjoy this one and then enjoy the next one. But for those of you who are actually um, in the same week as me, uh, I don't know why I'm being weird about this, but yeah, you'll have to wait for a little bit. What I did here, this is a little bit of a trick that I learned by accident. Not in this video, but I learned it a while back. Is when you hold control down and you drag a zoning to the point where it can't be built, it doesn't place the zone down, but it does ascribe um, the pavement that belongs with that zone. So for low density, there's like the pavement with the grass. For medium density, there's full pavement. It does ascribe that to the road that you dragged it to. So that's how I got those roads to use the pavement near the water. And it does stay between saves, but when you put a new building down, it does override what you did before. So it's semi-handy, it's semi-useful. It doesn't do anything functional for the game. It's just for those people who think a little bit like me and just want the pavement to look normal instead of just stop in the corner like it did over there. Yeah, so here I'm just showing some screenshot or some bit of an overview of all the things that I built. Here's some of the incredible garbage piles that I hope I'm gonna get rid of next video. Here's some things that I built last week and they're still going strong. These nice little houses. I'm still planning to work on these houses in the general area. They need more jobs in that general area. And this is what the city looks like right now with some lights. There's so many things I want to work on in the city. It's mind-boggling to me. The streetlights look a bit too bright, so I do want to change those, or maybe make my own light cone models or something like that. I don't really know how that works exactly, but when it's completely dark it works fine. And here's a nice little closing shot of the first freight train. So what I did actually worked. I made sure that 2 farms spawned with the building next to the railroad, and this is one of the freight trains that resulted from it. Thank you all for watching, and I'd like to see you again. Goodbye.